A lot of amazing games have just come out and are about to come out this year. Animal Crossing New Horizons, Doom, Neo, Ori, we're about to get Resident Evil 3, and Final Fantasy VII remakes on top of the eventual The Last of Us 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, and Ghost of Tsushima. And that list isn't even exhaustive yet. My life revolves around games more now than it ever has. A while ago, I was staring out the window when a thought hit me. How different would my life be if I had never started gaming? Never mind even the fact that right now, a lot of my job revolves around gaming. No, in general. What if I had never picked up gaming? What would I, as a person, be like today? So I sat down and started on a list. What are some things I learned from gaming over the years, both positive and negative? When I was done, I decided it might be fun to see what my Twitter followers had to say about the topic, so I went and asked. What I found was that a lot of them had very similar experiences to mine. I've been playing games since I was very, very young. Although I didn't really get my own console until I was 10 years old, the Big 10, when my parents finally decided that I was allowed to have a Nintendo 64 with none other than Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Now, the problem is, if you already know this, I'm Dutch, so I didn't speak a word of English, especially at that age. But I did want to play Zelda, and I wanted to know what the Deku Tree was telling me, so I sat down on the couch with an English dictionary, and every so often I'd yell at my dad, just to figure out what the story was about. Zelda was very pretty, and I liked the flying fairy. Yes, really. So I wanted to know what the Deku Tree was trying to instill in me. And with my dictionary in hand and my dad at the side, I could figure out pretty much everything. Most everything I didn't want to look up, I tried to guess given the context. And it worked. It really worked. I played through the entire game, together with my brother and a friend of his, while actually understanding the whole story. On top of that, I now spoke a little bit of English. Video games had just taught me a new language, through sheer necessity. I wanted that story, I got that story. But that isn't all that video games taught us, no. One thing that video games did teach me, time and time again, is that being a good person will generally get you better rewards, a better ending, better characters, better everything, really. Being a good person in video games is fundamentally the best choice in terms of upgrades, endings, and characters. Being nice to people almost always comes with innate benefits. In Stardew Valley, if you give villagers gifts until they start to like you, they'll send you new recipes or even items. In Mass Effect, if you stay friendly with everyone, you have a much greater chance of overcoming the final battle in one piece. In Undertale, if you're just nice to everyone, you don't have to fight anyone. And also, nobody will think you're a complete and total monster in real life, which is a nice bonus. Think about it. There simply aren't many games that actively encourage the player to be a bad person, to try and hurt the characters around them. The opposite is often true. Help out that village, do the extra side quest to befriend that faction, don't accept payment from that poor man who needs the money for his sick child. In many cases, the game will then find a way to return the favor. Reward the effort you put in. You reap what you sow in the best ways. Which makes an excellent bridge to my next point, which is good things come to those who wait. Patience. When I was younger, I was probably the most impatient person you will ever know. Sometimes I still am, but in games, I've learned to be patient. When I'm playing Dark Souls or any games like it and I keep failing on a boss, stop, think, carefully and patiently try out some new tactics. What's going wrong? Where? How can I fix it? Just rushing in and trying again doesn't often work. Sure, after bashing your head against that wall enough times, something's got to give, but it's definitely helped me to stop and consider other options more often. In that same vein, plenty of games quite literally ask you to sit and wait to get things done. Fishing in most games has you stare at a bobber for a while, waiting for that sign that a fish took the bait. I'm going to bring up Stardew Valley again, but there too you have to wait several days for your crops to grow, even though yes, of course you can just sleep through all the days, but you shouldn't. In Pokemon, you slowly train up your team. In Resident Evil, you wait until the monsters pass by your hiding spot. Of course, there are always ways to circumvent these sorts of mechanics, but I, for one, have become a great deal more patient over my years of playing video games. And something that links back well to patience is actually perseverance. I've mentioned Dark Souls before, and I'm a huge fan of Souls-like games. Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Neo, Sekiro, a whole host of indie games that are Souls-like? If I hadn't had any perseverance at that point, I would have given up ages ago. Some of the bosses took me way more tries than they should have. Countless times you'll fall flat on your face on any given boss, and you just have to get up and try again. Don't give up. I can unfortunately say that I've given up on a lot of things in life that I probably shouldn't have. Drawing is one of the bigger ones, but games have definitely ingrained in me a sense of, I can do it, I just have to not give up. Keep going, we'll get there. Some of the harder games are brutal in how they teach you what to do and what not to do, but this doesn't just apply to the Souls games. In a lot of games, like Dishonored, I try to do full stealth runs. It's frustrating when you get caught on the home stretch at that point, but when I'm set on that stealth run, I will reset and try again. It's possible, I know it is. I just have to practice and do better. Learn from my mistakes, and next time I'll get it. You don't have to always do that alone, though. You can always ask for help. That's the next point on my list. Teamwork. If you're anything like me, you're not a big fan of asking for help. It always felt like a weakness. I'm just too dumb to do it alone. If I was stronger or smarter, I wouldn't need help. But the truth is, everyone needs help every once in a while. We have strengths and weaknesses, and we have to play to those to get through life. Even the one-armed wolf asks for aid from the sculptor and Emma, and he's really, really cool. Seriously. Most RPGs have an entire cast to help them out. Very few heroes in video games go at it entirely alone, and for good reason. To use a video game term, you're intentionally nerfing yourself by never asking for help. So yes, even I now occasionally grit my teeth and ask for help. And to leave the best for last, in my opinion anyway, empathy. Sometimes when you make choices in life, it's hard to see the effect you have on other people, but in video games, those effects are shown to you pretty clearly, at least by the end of it. Into the Moon, you start out thinking you're just doing a job, it's not that big of a deal. Why does everyone say the game will make you cry? But then you get to the end and, oh no, it's actually heartbreaking. I had no idea that something so small could mean so much to a person, and now I'm crying too. The entire Mass Effect and Dragon Age series are one long line of consequences. Destroyed that research all that time ago? Well, now you've doomed an entire race. Didn't make friends with the right people? You've just lost one of your most valued companions. In Undertale, well, you know, it's Undertale. And if you don't know, go play Undertale. Games shoved my nose into problems I caused, but also the good I could do by making the right choices. There are games that show us very real-world problems and the effects it has on people. Through games, I've gained a great deal of empathy for people who aren't me. For a lot of people, it's easy to get stuck in a bubble. This is my life, these are my friends who have similar lives, everyone else, well, I'm sure they're doing much the same. And although not all games do this, especially the story-rich games will stop to ask you, yes, but what about those other people? Those people who aren't your friends, people you've never met, never heard of, how are they doing? Perhaps this one half comes back to patience, to stop and think, and in that sense, I guess you could say that games are a pretty decent school of life all round. A lot of things will just improve over time as you play games. For example, if you play a lot of high-paced games, you'll probably improve your hand-eye coordination. You've probably heard of that one before, but I've also increased my attention to detail, even though sometimes I look past very obvious things instead. But still, it's an improvement. I stop to think outside of the box more often. Very often I find myself getting stuck in one particular line of thinking while trying to solve a problem in any game. Until I stop and think, wait, but this way doesn't work. I've been trying this for a while. What else could I be doing to achieve my goal? And there's also a few that I didn't actually have on my own list. From Boratin on Twitter, sometimes you can give all the right answers, yet your companion still turns on you. Solus, I'm looking at you. Sister of Elune talks about focusing on important information in large pieces of text, much like you would do while skimming quest lines in an MMO. Furies brings up learning to type faster, which I didn't even realize because I'd been shoved into blind typing school when I was younger, but that probably applies to me too. That Shepbro learned how to set priorities for themselves, which helps their current job along too. Draco says games brought mythology and folklore into the mix, which, I can honestly say, I wouldn't have been interested as much in history and ancient lore if it wasn't for games either. Knives Am had quite a list, but what jumped out for me was multitasking and identifying your teammates' strengths and weaknesses. Those are very important skills in any management position. And finally, the coolest. Communication is key. I can't believe I forgot about this one myself, honestly. Learning to communicate was basically a must when raiding in World of Warcraft, and in practically any multiplayer game afterwards, up to and including Overcooked. And all this back and forth has definitely fostered amazing communities the world over. I wouldn't have met the majority of my friends if it wasn't for games either. And that started with voice chats on video games all those years ago. And here's another one that I really just thought was pretty spot on, though I didn't get too many life lessons out of it otherwise. If you encounter more enemies, you're going the right way. So here's the thing. Remember how I started out my list by writing down the positives and the negatives about video games? Well, I couldn't really think about any negatives. So I kind of stuck to positives. And it's weird because whenever someone needs a scapegoat, especially in the media, it's very easy for them to target video games straight away. That man was a bad man because they played video games. They found Call of Duty on their computer. I heard from a friend that the guy played Doom on occasion. Of course, they only ever mention the quote-unquote aggressive games, the bad games that make you hurt others and use weapons. That same person might have also played Stardew Valley at the same time, or maybe they'd bought a Switch for the express purpose of playing Animal Crossing New Horizons. That doesn't make for very compelling headlines, though. So I wanted to make this list to highlight some of the great things games have given me. Not just in terms of endless entertainment, friends I found purely through online video games, incredible stories and beautiful visuals, but also the life lessons. They've given me patience, understanding, perseverance, a whole new language, and so many more things. And clearly, I'm not alone in this. I cannot ever thank video games enough for what they've meant to me, ever. But this will have to do. I'm only one person though, and as the opening list of games wasn't exhaustive, neither is the list of lessons I've learned. So I'll ask you now what I asked my Twitter friends before. What are some of the things games have taught you over the years? How have games made you better? I'm looking forward to reading your stories. Have a wonderful rest of your day.